board members have had an opportunity to read it. So we'll just start with identifying the kind of training, really what we're looking for, so that we give the ultimate presenter the opportunity to build an agenda based on what we're really wanting.
So I'll kick it off. So to borrow, I'm looking at some language from the culture, I think this is the Cultural Connections document, but just, when that outline of the understanding cultural competence, what the outcome is providing a framework on how to address issues of equity and race, and then creating a common language for entering into discourse. I thought that summed up pretty succinctly what I was looking for, but taking that, and perhaps it's not something we can do in the first session, but also having either discussion or actually some ideas about how to take then that framework and apply it towards reviewing policy and our work specifically as school board directors. So that's what I was hoping for.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess what spoke to me, and again, using words that we had in one of the documents, I mean, for me, what I would be looking for is certainly raising awareness of what I'm bringing to the table, knowledge, increasing understanding of the diverse groups in our community, the skills needed to, and then certainly action and advocacy. So when I read those, I guess those called key characteristics, that really spoke to me, because that's what I felt like I was really looking for in training, was all 4 of those areas. So I was happy to see them all articulated.
Advocacy and action, I like that.
Social justice, advocacy, and action. And that's where I think that we should be focusing it on. And I agree with what Amy said and with what you said too, Sandy. Having a framework, having diversity, cultural competency, diversity training, whatever we want to call it, and that framework set up. And then, but I also think it's important that we do the assessments also, so that we're seeing kind of where each of us is coming from. What, to use Janet's phrase, lenses we may have that we're looking through to help us to be more effective in understanding those from each board member, so that when we're looking at the policy, we understand the framework that we're coming from, and what particular biases we each might have that we're unaware of, because we all have them. So I think that's where the assessments are a powerful tool.
So just to recap what I'm hearing, cultural competency and establishing a common language, and then raising and addressing personal awareness and what we bring to the table, and the social justice, advocacy, and action.
And translating it into our work.
And I think that phrase up there, ethnocentric lens, is really powerful. I actually teach that in my sociology classes, and it's how we're raised culturally, is to look through that lens. So I don't know how it, what it's like to walk in someone who's African American shoes, or.
So what would that first session look like? Recognizing that we have limited amount of time, what would you want to convey specifically to the provider so that they could build an agenda that would meet your needs?
I think I'm hearing a pretty common language on just getting us at a baseline of where we are at and where our gaps are and where our skill sets are in our understanding of this issue. That I don't think we can move effectively forward until we have that understanding.
And I think that's one thing that Claudia brings up when she laid out a plan where she says building perspective, taking competence. Actually, that might not have been her first step. I apologize.
Claudette.
Claudette, and I'm
Yeah, I know.
gonna do that.
No, yeah, it's on my
Just change it to
calendar as
Claudia.
Claudia, I'm sorry too, so.
Exploring filters of the organization
Yeah.
themselves, and then the second part was building perspective, taking competence, which sounds like this is what we're discussing.
And, you know, from the meeting yesterday, what resonated with me is really engaging in that personal work at the beginning so that we're moving along with the rest of the people in the district. Because our end goal is going to be the policy creation, but a lot of that is going to come out of the work that comes from the focus groups and what the community is telling us. And so having I think one of the other things that they said yesterday, knowing we don't know what we don't know, and equipping us to be able to ask the right questions to push us beyond that ethnocentric lens, and to just make sure that we're advancing the work too will require that personal work in the beginning.
And I guess the other, just along those lines, that there's collaboration either in the retreat or in board briefings, but that we are hearing what the focus group is doing and what our staff is being trained, so that we make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of vocabulary and understanding that we're not over here doing this and our staff's being trained over here.
And I know I bring it up a lot, but that change that Yarrow gave us, where you start with resistance and suspicion, and then you end up getting to a place of embracing change, bringing us along on the same trajectory that the staff is on. I think there's value in that for that reason. I just see that, and I think that's part of the benefit of having a couple of us attending and then reporting on what we hear from the meetings. So it sounds like we have identified what we want.
Right.
Did Dawn have any, I didn't look through the email, did she have anything that she was adding to this?
Let's see. She says, in terms of, thank you for asking that, in terms of the cultural competency training, it clearly looks like Ms. Whiting's proposal is close to the things I've heard board members express in meetings, and similar to my original proposal for us to address this topic, to be able to develop policy linked to our vision, mission, and goals. Cultures Connecting looks like an excellent group to work with. Our district leadership as well is their ability for their work to be coordinated. This may be something that has already been addressed in those meetings that Amy and I were, this meeting that Amy and I were at. So
I didn't know what she was talking about.
and I think clearly there's a lot of overlap between the two, and they are all very uniquely and well qualified to provide some really deep.
Looking at both of the qualifications, it's incredibly impressive. But maybe-
There's a cost differential. I think there's, what isn't reflected in the Claudette Whiting proposal is additional travel expense too, so you would want to take that into consideration. But personally, I feel like this is a conversation that the three of you should probably have, because this will be work that will go on beyond my service on the board, and I think yours are the most important voices to figure this out.
Let's do that right now. Okay.
Yep, because they can't move forward on their work. This is
Right,
our
right, we have to
opportunity to
decide.
discuss it, so we have to decide here in this meeting.
So a difference I also noticed in the two proposals was the length of time for the sessions. So cultural competence was a 4-hour session for us on the 25th, or Claudette's was a full day. And so I don't know if there's any logistical.
6 hours.
Yeah, 6 hours. So I don't know if there's any logistic issues we have to think about in terms of other items on the agenda for the 25th.
A board meeting.
A board
Just
meeting.
the 7 PM board meeting.
Yeah, okay. So if we devoted the day to this. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the two.
And then, like I said, there's a lot of overlap in there, and just identifying which proposal more meets your needs. And I think there's also the possibility that you could utilize one or the other later on in the process too. It doesn't have to be, this is your only opportunity, you better decide right. I think it's ongoing work and,
Right.
just identifying right now what you want, who you want the work to begin with.
So I don't have any background with either one of the people involved here, so I'm just coming at it with fresh eyes. One of these we're using, is that right, for staff? Or did I miss?
Caprice Hollins has laid out, what you see there is actually the proposal for the
Staff.
administration throughout the year. I mean, it's a
Okay.
whole year's plan.
Okay, so having said that, that was, and again, they're very similar, but just the wording resonated with me a little more. It connected more with what I was looking for, but also going back to my desire that we are vertically aligned, I guess is the terminology we keep using, that I like the idea that we're matching what our staff is doing, and not that the other one certainly couldn't, but it seems like that's a little easier to keep the message and the information and the understanding very similar.
There is a benefit to that. And Claudette's, it's a very thorough proposal too. And that's,
Yeah, that's what I like about it.
yeah.
Okay, I did sit in on the Claudette meeting, so I think this is what's hard, is I didn't
Right.
hear the other, I heard this one. Claudette's family has been one of the families, her daughter had spoke at one of our meetings, and her son had had an incident at one of the schools. But what I like about hers is the detailedness of the proposal, and that she's lining out exactly and doing the assessments ahead of time, and that she's looking at all these different areas. Because I didn't really know what to expect until I saw this, because when we talked with her that day, I really honestly wasn't sure. I mean, I thought it sounded good, but it's really detailed and very structured. And I really appreciate that. And I like doing the assessments. And I also like that she comes out of a business setting, but she's also worked in different government organizations, because I think it gives a different, she's used to working with boards in a business setting, so she's used to boards and policy and having to blend then, the management and the employees with what board goals are, which at companies can often be very different and fragmented at the same time. So I think she's used to this work of blending the two together.
And just to clarify, she had the benefit of sitting down with board members. Caprice Hollins did not. So Caprice's proposal is lacking detail because we haven't told her what we want. She hasn't had the benefit of that conversation. So I don't want that to be missed in the conversation. But like I said, I think they all have some really strong backgrounds and capabilities.
Maybe too, our families in the North Shore School District might feel that they trust the process more if they know that it's a homegrown person, per se, that's working with the board. Or that we're having two different.
I think Caprice is definitely very qualified, for sure. So I'm going back and looking at least Caprice's cultural competence details that she put together for the August advance, and then I'm comparing it, because I think basically, cultural competence framework and norms for courageous conversations, I think we could expect a similar framework for ours, and then comparing that to Claudette's to see how it lines up with our goals that we identified. I figured that might be an easy way to do it. Just look at strictly as a goal.
Thank you, it's easier.
So guess it's a good thing that we have two great proposals to choose from.
No, that's the good news.
That's
It's
the
a
good news,
win-win.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
You're
just we're
not
struggling
gonna
as-
make a bad decision here. That's
Right,
the-
exactly.
so.
It's a good problem to have.
Mhm.
So I don't think I've heard clarity.
No, we don't have clarity.
Claudette also comes with this, I don't know if both of them will be doing this, because it's the Anna Duran, who's the PhD, who has an impressive list of companies she's worked for, IBM, Citibank, Merrill Lynch, Invesco, obviously huge issues in some of those businesses, the financial industry, at least a few years back. So, you know, I don't think we need, I don't want to belabor it too much because we probably need to make a decision. But I don't know if there's value to someone who's worked with boards before and then can help to integrate. So that's my position on it. But
Well, and I'm kind of getting to an opinion. So, because Claudette's is a longer, I feel having the 6 hours as opposed to the 4 would be helpful for me personally, to have more time to work on it. And there are some issues. I take your point, Jan, in terms of the fact that this is, Claudette's proposal is geared towards the board, but there are some specific things mapped out in here that talk about you know, it addresses, you know, when you're talking about the A, exploring the filters of the organization, you know, in terms of our work as a school board is directly referenced, and so how to take this new understanding we would have and translate it into our work, which was something I was looking for, so that is in there. But my only caveat is I think it could be counterproductive if we are doing a separate training that is different from the rest of the organizations, to Sandy's point, and I don't know if it'd be possible to talk about them syncing up, or if that is just not something that's going to result in a good outcome for us as the board of the organization.
that's really, I think that's what John, well, what I understood when you read it, Janet, that's what John was saying too, is, you know, why couldn't we have, I mean, they're doing the same, essentially having the same information, but probably just coming from two different places, right, where they present it from. So one's from dealing with boards, the other one, she's works in Seattle's public school district, right? The other,
She had.
she had.
Right, so that's very specific. So I guess, so my outcome, where I've come up is I'm leaning towards Claudette's, but only if we can be comfortable that it would integrate well with the cultural competency training that the leaders of the district are going to be doing year-long.
Can you pose that question to her, Larry or Janet? We can make the decision and then say that this would have to be one of our,
I want to do it.
oh.
But I also want to point you to A1 under her proposal, exploring the filters of the organization. And that is the 9 to noon portion. Conduct a pre-workshop situational analysis for the purpose of understanding the experiences and decision-making patterns of the school board with diversity and diversity philosophy in use. And there's work in there for the board to, there's extensive work in there for the board to need to commit to. So if that's the route that you decide that we're going, then that comes with a pretty big time commitment, the way I'm reading it. So I just want to make sure that board members are willing and able to make that commitment before August 25th. If you read that A1.
Critical incidents over the last 3 to 5 years. Within reach.
The school board and other participants will document the history of critical incidents over the last 3 to 5 years regarding race and cultural circumstances that involve the attention of the school board.
So since you guys met with her, I mean, in terms of other participants, I would hate to sign up staff members for a full day commitment right before the school year starts. So I don't know if that's something that's critical to this proposal as well, that might be an issue.
We switched the August 25th and the September 8th.
No, we can't because Tricia was only available on September 8th. So I'm just throwing things out. I mean, I have no, it doesn't matter to me what the outcome is. I think they're all very competent and we would get a really excellent training regardless of who we chose. In the discussion that we had yesterday, a lot of the focus work is going to be, the focus group work will be exploring some of this that Claudette is talking about here in that first section. So you could also revise what her suggestion is and ask her to come at it in a different way, so I don't want that to be a barrier, but I just want you to think about it and think about what we're committing to before we go into it.
Trying to figure out how to phrase this, but I'm a little confused on the price breakdown, and I certainly don't want this to be about money because this is an important thing, but it looks like the way they're written out, what is the difference in cost? I know we certainly have members of the community very concerned about transparency and how we're spending money, so what is the difference in the price of the two?
So a 4-hour or more training session with Cultures Connecting would be $2,300. That's sort of an all-inclusive price. The proposed 6-hour training from Claudette is $11,500 plus some other ancillary expenses.
And so I was reading that correct, but those are both just for the board training, that those aren't part of an ongoing contract or a long-term? Okay, thank you.
So that's just for this particular session or a particular session with the board on the 25th.
Thank you.
What was a factor of 5? 5 times different, which is significant.
Does that include for the other culturals connecting, if they do the assessments and put together, if she were giving assessments and asking us to write or take bias tests or whatever they're asking us to do, does that cost go up with Cultures Connecting, or is that just their workshop? Because I think Claudette's workshop includes all of
The pre-work.
the work, yeah.
I don't know that specifically. I'd have to ask her about that. My sense is it would be the same. Actually, the topic of the use of assessments came up yesterday in our conversation, and while she's not necessarily opposed to, Caprice I'm speaking of is not necessarily opposed to assessments, it's not the first place she would choose to go. She prefers a more organic conversation that takes place. She thinks the assessments can sometimes, and I'm paraphrasing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, can sometimes get down to a drill down to a place where it starts to develop labels or kind of a blaming or a type of, you're wrong if you feel this way type of thing, that some of the results of the assessments can be difficult perhaps to deal with, and recognizing that everybody comes from a different place, comes from a different background. She wants to presume that everything is starting from ground zero and just kind of build up from there. Is it that accurate reflection?
Yeah, I think that was in response to my question about the implicit bias test, whether or not that's part of the work, and the answer was no, that was not. So I think that was specific to that.
Yeah, it looks like
question.
in her order, she does the exploring the impact of stereotypes, and then she has an additional, at least this is what it's looking like for the instructional leaders, where I'm from poem, so increase awareness of experience that she perception, so she does a different order.
But I do know that she's working with Cascadia Community College staff, and that part of that work does involve each of the staff members taking an assessment of some sort. And so, it's just not, she'll do it. I mean, she's not opposed to doing it. It just wouldn't be her choice or her preference for starting at that place.
I think that Claudette was also asking us to, like you guys had mentioned, write down critical incidents. I think she had us writing a page or something, so it wasn't just taking an assessment, but that definitely was part of it. 2-page analysis, feedback about increasing their capacities to deal with differences. Oh, no, that's what she gives us. Somewhere I saw that you write a page or
That is great too.
two, I just don't know what it is right now.
I think that came up in the conversation when we were in the room. I don't remember reading it in here, but it could very well be.
Give me 1 second, just so we all know what we're getting into.
So I would say, if I could interject, I think either one will do an excellent job. And I think both are amenable to adapting a plan to meet the needs of the board. I would say the difference I would see between the two is, I think with Claudette, you're going to get a trainer who has much more experience working at the governance level of large organizations, and this is a large organization. I would say with Caprice and Cultures Connecting, you're going to get an organization that's much more familiar with the school setting and environment. And I think that's, if I had to sort of summarize it as to what I see as the significant differences in what they bring to the table, I think that would be it in my mind.
I found it right here. I thought that was a good summary too. Prior to the session, you're going to fill out the subjective experience with differences questionnaire, and then ask our participants if they've had experience being racially or culturally different. If you answer yes, you write a 1-page story about it. So I did. So there is some work involved, yet my question would be, does doing this work up front save us work down the road, right? Where we don't do the work up front, then are we getting...
Yeah, and I think what we talked about yesterday, the opportunity to enthusiastically embrace this social justice change opportunity, that goes beyond us and the organization as it is now. So it's building something for the future.
What is the professional development budget for a board? Because I know we have it budgeted in
We have
a
a
certain dollar amount.
$3,000 per year
Individual.
for
Yeah, and it's
individual
not-
board
And we
members.
don't have actual professional development outside.
Conferences,
We do.
that's our conference
That,
budget.
that's outside the WASDA
So-
conference. So if you
Oh,
choose to go
WASDA,
to
okay, I see.
Other trainings or other conferences, it comes
Okay.
out of that.
So like national.
National comes out of the professional development budget. So, you know, you could choose to forego the national conference and concentrate on this. That's one pot of money that you have access to, so. But again, you know, I think it came up yesterday as well. There's a commitment level where we demonstrate our commitment to the action plan by how we support it with resources as well, so.
We can ask her to relook at her pricing.
So, okay.
I don't know. Because we didn't include the travel costs in that.
So what I heard is that we're establishing a baseline of where we are now and how we move forward, that we are looking at our own cultural competency and our personal awarenesses of our own biases, and we need to decide who's going to do that work. So, decision time.
Okay, because travel is a factor, where does Claudette live?
Claudette is in the area. Her partner is, I gathered, from San Francisco, but honestly, I don't know for sure. A lot of her work is in that area. Do you know the answer to that, Larry? Or Kimberly, do you know?
I honestly don't. I would imagine she has to be on this side of the coast and working together.
Her,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I specifically read through there to see if I could identify that, and I did not.
I think that if we do decide on Claudette, we need to put it contingent to finding that out, and then if it was on the East Coast, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
You're talking out in a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see it. So do you want to make a decision contingent upon identifying that and then identifying an alternative if the answer isn't what you want it to be?
I'd like to do that, but I think there's two questions we want to ask. One is about her working with Caprice,
Right.
you know,
Communicating and
communicating with
aligning.
Caprice, and that probably has another cost associated, or
Mhm.
can we ask her to include it in this cost as part of this? And then Claudette lives here, but where is her partner coming from? So that would be my proposal.
It's the cost differential is a big stumbling block for me.
So Avatar Research Institute is in Washington DC.
And that's who
Just
Anna,
Claudette does it. Does Ann do it with her?
she included the bios of both as the people that were,
Let's see here. I mean,
of the trainers for the proposed workshop. So she's proposing that both would be providing the training together. I think they work in tandem.
I've seen a lot of we's. We were proposing, we bill. I've seen a lot of we's.
2 consultants assigned to the project, 2
Yes.
biographical
That's
sketches
yeah,
of the
there you
trainers
go.
to the
because
proposed
with the
workshop.
other workshop, it's one.
Right.
So I guess the way my brain operates is that we have 2 excellent options in front of you, but quite a significant difference in price. I would go with the one that is cheaper, barring any really strong evidence that there's a huge difference quality-wise.
Yeah. I was trying to see, just to confirm, if we will be bringing her from DC.
That's additional costs. It is.
Right, I think we'd have to make sure. So that's what I was saying, that the stipulation.
It is on page,
Oh, it is in this proposal? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
it is. Materials and travel professional fees for this proposal do not include materials and associated hotel, airfare, and ground transportation.
So that's an addition to.
From the Bay Area, I think it's.
No, it isn't from the Bay Area. I think it's
It
from
doesn't say-
DC.
Okay, I agree. It's too, we don't want to pay for hotels and everything, so I agree. It'll be another
Unfortunate.
few $1,000s, so.
I think it doesn't, so I'm hearing you say that we will use Caprice Hollins for this particular one. I think it doesn't preclude looking at her for some future work, because there's still a lot of work ahead of us, and her particular skills and what she brings to the table may be better suited for the next conversation or the next one, for future times.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? All right. Did you get enough clarity around what we want to?
Crystal.
All right,
Wow.
thank you for
Progress
all right.
for all of us. I meant for all of us.
It's painful for the audience members, I'm sure, but we, as you know, this is our only time to talk and process, and we need a little bit of time to think about some of the things that we're making decisions on, so thank you for your forbearance. Next item on the agenda is a discussion about the September 8th board retreat agenda and the suggested topics to include in that. That'll be Trisha Lubach from WASDA. And the suggestions have included civility policy, tone at the top, board member use of social media. And I just want to get clarity so that I can convey it to Trisha to allow her to build an agenda.
Should we read Dawn's statements
Oh,
first?
sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
You have it in front of
the
you?
only thing, I mean,
Okay.
is it a tradition for the board to look at operating procedures every year?
Yes.
Should that be on this agenda also?
It is
Because it's not-
definitely, that is a given, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
That's a
Okay.
given, this is the extra things that board members have
Right.
one or another suggested. But yes, we will be looking at the operating procedures, that would be the core of the work
That would be my only addition.
Yeah, Dawn says, I've already stated I don't believe a civility policy discussion is appropriate at this time and should be a discussion pursued once the school board has changed if the new board is interested. Additionally, I would like to point out that simply following Robert's Rules of Order is the way the board should be addressing minority voice and board decorum. I'll just read the rest of what she wrote. Board member use of social media was addressed in a board briefing, and I believe that no board member has violated OPMA on Facebook, although that's not what the attorney found. I also don't believe anyone can take away freedom of speech rights. I've seen no discussions between school board members about school district business that has led to a decision outside of the meeting where all 5 board members can be present. If the board president and superintendent believe this has happened, they should have brought this to the attention of the board members rather than trying to impose unnecessary restrictions on innocent behavior. I think the challenge is that the law interprets discussion and action much more broadly than we would interpret it, and that's what the attorney reflected in his statement in the board briefing, that even if 3 board members are not engaging in the conversation, if they are party to the conversation, it is a violation. So it's one of those challenging.
So who's getting off the NSD discussion group then?
Well, maybe that's what we talk about.
Right, I think that's
Because I don't think it would be something where we'd have to say
Or off the
individual.
PALs, because I think we're all on the PALs. at the
Too,
same
yeah,
time.
so do we have a discussion, do we, any closed group, do we not participate in?
Yeah, because I know Janet, Amy, me, and Dawn are all on the PALs Facebook group.
I'm not sure I am, I might
You are.
be.
You are. Because your name always pops up as seeing that post.
Oh,
So, yeah.
interesting. I rarely visit that page, so.
I don't think it's been recent, but when we were discussing the
Okay,
paper starts
okay.
raising.
That could be. This is part of what we're talking about, because I think this is a much more in-depth conversation. And it sounds like there is some confusion, so it probably would be a good thing to add to the discussion on the 8th. And then we'll come back to the civility policy, which I think Sandy introduced in December or January, I believe, long time ago. And then going back to Dawn's comments, I've asked that tone at the top be discussed by the board. I'm heartened to be seeing some behavioral changes in the superintendent, at least, which I believe may be tied to my sharing of that document. I think this is a very serious issue, but if there is not a majority in agreement with that belief, then having a discussion about it does nothing but create another confrontational opportunity that I'm not certain will serve to improve superintendent and board performance. I had to leave the last board meeting early to go to the airport, and I wasn't able to ask the board this question. And I think that's been part of it. I think the topic has been introduced. 2 members have expressed interest in having the discussion, 3 have not, so I've operated on the majority rules, and it has not appeared on the agenda. But if you do want this part of the discussion, and we would need to clarify if we're talking about board tone at the top, organizational tone at the top, what exactly we're talking about, so that we can give Patricia some insight into how she builds the agenda. But is this an item that you want to include in our September 8th retreat?
If this is the time of the year, and this is again my opinion, let's see what you guys think, but in terms of Dawn's comments about waiting for the new board, which is a valid deal, I just don't want to miss a year. If we typically do it at the beginning of the school year, this is the time that we talk about the operating procedures, and it seems like these items fall within that category. I wouldn't want to wait a full year to address them. So I just wanted to make that comment that I believe this is an important thing to talk about. I poked around myself and looked around Riverview civility policy. I think it's something the board has expressed interest in learning from other boards. And so if we want to investigate that again, have a discussion on it, to really have time to sit down and study it and see if it would be something that would benefit us. In terms of tone at the top, I'm willing to discuss it, but in my brain, we are the top. So I don't know if that frames the discussion differently. But that's what I consider us the top, if that has any bearing.
Yeah, I'll just kind of echo what Amy just said. for me, and I think it fits in with Don's comments, the civility policy, as we looked into it, it's not a small project, it will be a big one, and it's not going to be something we're going to accomplish in a study session, and so just an agreement that it's something we feel it has value for the district as a whole. We as the board can kind of start working, but in terms of it really getting into the district, and I know if you expressed some concerns that I think this has some value to assisting with. Just in terms of relationship conversations between staff and community members and so forth, that I think having a civility policy can help build some trust. But that's going to be a long-term project, not something, like I said, that we're going to be able to do in a month or two. So
Maybe that's part of our diversity.
I think that's.
I think all of those conversations
I think
overlap,
it goes hand in
absolutely.
hand.
And so I think it gets to, yes, it's going to impact the next board as well, and so certainly but a starter conversation, I
A starter
think,
conversation.
is a good idea. And then, to me, when I read the words tone at the top, that's reflective of us, the 5 board members, whoever they are, we are the top, and it's the tone that we set. We are the role models. We are behaving the way we ask our staff and our students to behave. And so that's how I would frame that conversation, is how are we behaving and how does that reflect in our community.
So the civility policy discussion I'm good with, and I think that goes with the work that we're doing. Tone at the top, I think, is all of us, including the administration, and we're all at the top. So I don't see it as just the boards at the top and we're separated. I don't, it's up to you guys. That I'm not married to that. I'm married to mine. When I said that, I said, that sounds silly. But also during this conversation on the agenda, going back to the Facebook, I prefer that we do have the lawyer there, because I think I would ask very different questions, since I am a Facebook user, than maybe you're asking the lawyer. And I think if we're going to be talking about, can we all 3 be in a group together, I don't know that the person that's coming in from WASDA will necessarily be able to answer our questions. And we might have a lot of questions at the time that we're having this discussion. So I would like to have Buzz or another attorney where I can personally ask them questions and the other board members can ask them questions.
What if we schedule, he's produced quite a bit of material on OPMA, and we've gone through the training, and we'll have opportunities to go through it again, but what if we did that without Buzz? I mean, it's the board retreat, and then if you have questions, we could certainly schedule a session with him, with all board members present, so that
we
you could.
maybe call him, maybe have a time on the agenda, maybe we just turn on the, I think it would be helpful if we all had heard the same thing.
answers.
So
Yeah,
maybe
no,
we
I
just
agree.
ask him,
I
you
agree.
let him know, at X time, we're going to be discussing it. If we have any questions, can we call you?
It will depend on his schedule, whether he's available, but we can structure that in, if I'm seeing agreement on that we would like to have
Like
access.
you
I
said,
don't want to
down.
take the time up here, but there's a lot more specific questions. If I'm on a discussion group, I'm just going to give a quick example, and I say, go ahead to somebody, if you would like to meet with any of our board members, you can go ahead and private message me. Is that a violation? So I have a lot more particular questions versus, the obvious to me, which is, giving some opinion of something we haven't discussed in an open public meeting that none of the other board members have heard us say in an open public meeting.
Basically discussing the district business, it is very challenging.
And how do we
and
know if
that's a really good
three of us
discussion.
are on the same site? We do know with PALS before and with North Shore Discussion Group, there's at least 3 of us, but how do we know in other situations? So I think there's a lot broader questions
I'm just going to
that I would like to ask that are more specific. What if we're
Yeah,
on
and it's
Instagram?
those situational questions, I think, that will gain us the most insight and
Maybe we can have those
understanding
written
of what-
down beforehand in that way.
Yeah, maybe that might help frame the discussion.
I have like a list I could start writing down. that I think would be important for all of us. And I'm sure each of you do too.
Okay.
I would just offer that you don't need to wait till September 8th. If there are questions that I haven't asked in the right way, and you'd like different questions asked, I can certainly submit those to Buzz. He's very prompt in his responses.
I personally would like to be able to ask and hear him give, I mean, do we not have access to Buzz ourselves? I don't know, or does the board have?
That's what
Huh?
I have no issues, I just want to hear the answers too. I guess that's what I'm,
Me too.
so if you're asking questions, I want to be able to.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think that's beneficial because we might ask a lot.
I'm just saying if there are specific questions you have that would be relevant now, because you're engaging in social media behavior now, rather
So
than
all
waiting
three
until
of us
September
are
8th.
there's 3 of us on North Shore School District and there's 4 of us on the PALS website. Is that a violation? If we're on, I would like that specific question asked to him.
I think that's the question I did ask him, and if the topic of conversation is not district business, it's not a violation.
If we're not having the discussion, that's what I'm asking. If we're all reading what our, because we're engaging in our community, if we're reading what our community is
It's when
writing,
we
but we're not.
write that we,
So that's,
yeah,
those are the kind of questions that I would like to clarify.
I think he did clarify that question. If you're not engaging in the conversation, there's no violation. If no board member is engaging in the conversation.
So we can't all be
if
on the
eight-
same.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Um,
I didn't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
If any board member of the 3 or more contributes to the conversation, you have, my understanding is, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding from many discussions around this topic is you then have an Open Public Meetings Act violation because you have 2 or more board members that are privy to the view of a board member, so you have created a discussion. It would be no different than if you were having a conversation about a topic up here in the dais and you as a board member were just listening but didn't have anything to contribute to the discussion. So it's not the mere presence, it's the participation.
Okay, and what if you're clarifying on, I mean, this is why I think I would rather ask the questions in our study session, but
so let's do that. I mean, let's just see if he's available so that he can dive
That'd
in
be great.
Right.
and make that part of the
That way we
September
don't have to
8th
pay for
agenda.
interrupting there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying if there are questions about things you're doing right now that you would like clarity on between now and the 8th, I'm certainly happy to pass those along to Buzz and to pass it along to you directly as I have his exact words of response.
And if not, that's
Not,
no
that's
problem
fine.
either.
and I'm just saying, I would like to hear it from him and then not.
Well, and with the ability to ask clarifying questions, is that what I'm hearing, Kimberly? Is that
Yeah.
You'd like that
Yeah.
opportunity to
Yeah. the
present
interaction.
different scenarios?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got clarity to give to Tricia, except for the tone at the top. Are we saying yes, that that's a broader conversation of all of us combined? And that is, which starts sort of with who is the district and are we part of the district? I think that's part of the tone at the top conversation. But is that one that you want included?
I could go either way. It might be something that comes up when we talk civility, just in
Yeah,
terms
because
of
to me,
how
I see
we.
those conversations intertwined.
So it will not be a distinct item. If it comes up organically, that's what I hear. Okay. But civility policy. And I'll just say that, as a newer, I think back to when I was a new board member, having the structure of a procedural operating protocol was really helpful to me, to have questions answered. So having that in place and then revisiting it next year in the middle of the year when you have people who have more experience and context to put into it, I think is a really nice blend of the two. Okay. All right, I think we've got clarity on that. Next item on the agenda, thank you for the discussion. Future agenda items.
So I don't think this is an agenda item because it's not for us to make a decision on, but I could use some clarity on what has happened with our state testing, because I'm now hearing from parents saying, wait, my kid sat for all those hours to take the end of course biology or the end of course algebra, and does that mean that was a complete waste of their time? So I'm just trying to get a sense specifically of our incoming sophomores and juniors, I believe those are the parents of what are they doing, and do they still have to take the end of course biology even though it's not going to count for them, and to try to be able to give some clarity to our parents of what has just happened.
And I think it's so new. I haven't seen anything across our desks yet that, I mean, I think it's a great question. So if the biology end of course exam isn't required for the classes of 15 and 16 as a graduation requirement, who will take the end of course biology exam next year? And
Right, and
we'll follow up on that.
yeah.
We haven't received anything yet that I'm aware of that.
Can I add a corollary question too? Because something else I've gotten questions on is that the idea was from OSPI that we would get quick results. And I think an expectation was set that the parents would get those quick results. And if that's not true, having some clarity in terms of the result situation would be
For the
helpful.
smart balance assessments,
Yeah.
I think that the quick results were focused primarily on the third grade students because of that requirement, specific requirement for a conference between the school and the family for a student that was below standard on reading. So it was pretty specific to that. We have not been seeing the quick turnaround time in general on the assessment results coming back that we had anticipated. But I think it was always the plan that assessment results would generally come back, you know, in the format that we give to parents in that August timeframe, as they have in prior years.
That's a different understanding that I have
Yeah.
as well, so that's helpful, thank you.
The topic of I went to that state board roundtable last week, and assessments and equity were the two hot topics. Not a lot of clarity provided. They were looking for input from people instead of passing on information.
Great, thank you.
All right.
I have one.
Oh, sorry.
Can we just get an update on how the investigation into the Timbercrest incident is going?
Slower than we would care for. So we have been pushing on the attorney and the investigator as much as we can. Currently, the investigation is complete as far as all of the interviews have been conducted. Everybody who needs to be spoken to as a part of the investigation has been, and we're just simply awaiting the final report from the investigator. We were told possibly the middle of this week, which tomorrow would technically be the middle of this week, but we've been told this week and prior weeks. So it's extremely frustrating. We haven't worked with this attorney and investigator before, recommended and assigned to us through the risk pool. So we're trying to push as much as we can. It's a little bit out of our hands as far as we're not driving the actual completion of the work. I would say that we've given the speed of this, you know, for us, this is a very crucial incident, and our timeline is much more urgent. For the attorney and investigator, this is probably one of several cases that they may be working on at this point in time, and so they may have a different sense of urgency, but we're pushing as hard as we can.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is board member reports. We'll start with Sandy.
Okay, just have one, and you all have a, independent of me, but an invitation from Melissa Somoza at Woodmore Elementary. It's their summer reading program, and I've been helping out with that. And again, a special thank you to our technology department for helping me, as I have been assigned book checkout duties. And once my son wasn't able to go, I became sole person in charge. But I know we've all had great conversations up here about struggling learners in the achievement gap, and this is a great example of the stuff we're doing. So if anybody, it's right
Dolphin,
here.
yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to come on a Tuesday or Thursday morning in the next couple of weeks, I'll be the one behind the counter. Trying to make the system work. So,
Great, thank you, Sandy. Kimberly.
So I met with, like you had mentioned, Claudia, and had a great conversation. It was good to meet in a group with Larry. I think that's all, because we haven't been on school visits or.
No, we've had this nice extra week off between board meetings. It's been lovely. All right, Amy?
Just, again, 2 quick things. So July 9th, I got to go to the Schools Foundation. So, Carmen, Schools Foundation, yes, she is. Okay, do I remember correctly, Carmen, that $10,000 was raised through milk money?
Yes.
Yes, so $10,000 they raised by putting out milk jugs in the community, and that all goes to our homeless students in our district. It's an amazing effort they do, and I also want to recognize all the work they're doing for getting backpacks together for our free and reduced lunch kids. Again, amazing efforts that they're doing. And then again, I was appreciative of the opportunity to be in the diversity consultant meeting yesterday as well, and for President Quinn and I were discussing ways that we can make sure we all get a chance to sit in there, because it's just incredibly helpful to be able to learn alongside. So I appreciated that.
All right, and the proposal that we had from Claudette came out of that meeting, and she's gifted, and at some point it would be great to look at using her. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, the SBE, the State Board of Education Roundtable, a lot of frustration around the assessments and the lack of clarity and where are we going, and pretty diverse group of people in the room, and there were just individual tables and then reported out to the whole, but the topics, those topics of diversity and assessments being the major topics, same topics that they've had at others that they've had around the state, so it's a pretty common issue. And then this morning I met with Sarah So, she's organizing the community, and they have an organizational meeting coming up where they're going to talk about what their identity kind of as a group and how they can partner with the district in working on this diversity work as well for the equity. So hoping to stay connected with her. And then I am working on a couple of things, a couple of roundtables coming up. Not great timing, but the timing came upon me instead of me seeking the timing, but August 4th is with Representative Del Bene from 3:30 to 4:30, and if you could let Cindy know